Susanne, it's just so wonderful to be hosting you on my show. Good morning to you. And, I know we've interacted in the past, and probably that one interaction changed many things about you in my mind. And I certainly wanted you to be my guest when I started off this series. So thanks for consenting to be on this series called Insightful Leadership Conversations. And in particular, would love to understand leadership from an executive coach's eyes. So welcome aboard this journey.
Thank you so much for having me.
Susanne, tell me something more about yourself. I see that you are a coach, you are a facilitator, you are a TEDx speaker, you are an author. Which of these roles excite you the most? Because that's a fantastic, diverse set of roles that you seem to be playing at any given point in time.
Sure. Well, the one that isn't listed there is mother, and that's probably the one that excites me the most. I have two beautiful children, 11 and 9, and I feel very blessed. But professionally, my great love has always been coaching one-on-one, and my aim and vision for myself and my work has always been to work with the highest level leader possible and to earn the reputation and the credibility to do that, because I see them being the levers in a system. And the more that the most powerful people with the resources and to really change the world, when I can work with them and help them become the best, highest, most effective version of themselves, they impact so many people and so many critical decisions. And so that's really, really exciting to me. So I love one-on-one work. I've done that work for 19 years, probably worked one-on-one with thousands of leaders, all different industries. And so I get a peek into the very personal life and personal experience of what it is to lead at a very, very high level. So I find that really exciting because it's just some of the brightest, smartest, most talented people in the world. And my job is to make them better. So it's quite a tall order. So that's probably my first love professionally. Secondly is writing. I love how writing can then go out into the world and travel without me. And it has a longevity that can outlive me. And I love when my writing gets circled and someone sends a comment back saying it mattered to them or they were able to use something from that. So two loves: one-on-one coaching, writing, but I really love it all. I love doing a keynote or an offsite with a team, working with a team over some period of time, because I love human beings, and it probably will lead where we head our conversation next. I love the human experience.
So, I see so much of porosity that seeps in between the professional and a personal space that you deal with day in and day out, whether it is your own self or that of the leader. So how do you experience leaders when you see that at the end of it all, they are humans and they do have a mind and a heart and a soul? What's been your experience with respect to that?
Yeah, well, you just nailed it. I mean, we're all first and foremost human beings grappling with this very strange experience that really is inherently hard. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, but it's not easy being human. And then we couple that with leading and being responsible for leading the world well, which is what very senior leaders are doing, and especially now. And so I just, I have, what do I see in leaders, just how human they are, how much they are really grappling with various parts of how to accomplish what they want to accomplish. And they're some of the brightest, talented, smartest people. And it's just such a tall task. And it takes a toll on all of us. It's lonely. It's so uncertain. There's no clear answers. How do we balance that with family needs and or our health? And so we can be very effective in some areas and then very ineffective. Like we can be an incredible loved leader in our work, and then our marriages are falling apart, or we don't have a relationship with our children, or vice versa, or our health is a huge issue. So it's just incredibly hard to hold it all together with the weight of the world that is on. So I have a great deal of compassion for men and women who seek to lead at a very high level. It's a very high calling, and in some ways quite thankless. No one seems to see you anymore. They just see your title, and they want things from you. They want acknowledgement, promotion, you to validate them, and yet no one notices that you need the same. Right. So in that way, I think it's really lonely. So I just, I have just so much compassion for these men and women, because they're really giving their blood, sweat, and tears to serve the world well and want to do the right things. And of course, we don't always know we don't always know how we impact other people. And so my job really is help them to see themselves, see who they want to become, and see right now how they impact other people, and small things they can do that could do so much work for them as to be effective out there. Because sometimes they don't realize how powerful they are and how much they really matter to, their attention matters to other people.
Beautiful. Yeah. The word compassion is such a powerful one in anybody's coaching journey, and I'm sure you're using it to the best effect while you're coaching leaders. Congratulations on being chosen to be Forbes, among the Forbes coaches. How does it feel being there, and what are those efforts that led you to actually get there?
Yeah, I think it is, when I started out, almost 20 years ago now, again, my aim was really to, how do I work with the most powerful people? Because that's my way of changing the world. It's my small dent in the universe, as Steve Jobs would say, what's the dent you want to make? Because I see a lot of people hurting. Almost everyone wants to be somewhere other than where they are. And they're trying to get there, and it becomes, quite a losing battle. Because no matter what we do externally, it doesn't change anything internally, not really, and not for very long. And so I usually work at two levels, inside and outside. And so with Forbes, it was just another vehicle. I'm delighted to be part of the council. It's a wonderful vehicle to get my writing out and some thought leadership. So I feel really, again, it's endlessly exciting that when it gets published and it travels the world and people read it, because I aim to communicate one big idea that hopefully they can use that day. So I love it is just another piece of, TEDx was the same. How do I continue to build the reputation, the credibility? How do I get known? And how do I get a message out, more importantly, that actually matters to people?
Beautiful. So there's compassion in your story. There's a message that you want to leave behind through your writing. You want to be your whole self at home, and it's a rare blend. So congratulations on being all of that in one person. You've been dealing and working with several senior executives. Do you see a very common leadership behavioral pattern that would be useful for us to know?
Yeah, really great question. Two answers. One, overarching, it is all, and this isn't not my term. It was Cousins and Posner's about 35 years ago. They wrote in the Leadership Challenge, all leadership development is self-development. Mm-hmm. So what I'm always working on is the instrument of leadership, which is the human being. What is their personal history? How has that informed every single thing they do, how they see the world now, how they then communicate outward? And so increasing their awareness, their own self-awareness of their own tendencies, backgrounds, how they become reactive and ineffective. So that's sort of overarching, what's a theme. The other theme is, and it's really simple, and I wrote a Forbes post on this, so it's on my blog. If you go to SuzanneBiro.com /blog. It is, there's one communication skill that I teach almost every executive group or client I work with. And it's the power of speaking from I when you mean to speak from your own experience. What do I think right now? What do I want right now? What am I feeling right now? What am I trying to accomplish? And really verbalizing that. So when we're in a meeting, often what leaders do is they will use the word one, they, or us, or we, when they're really speaking about their own experience. And it's a way that we remove ourselves from our own conversation, and doesn't feel as risky. As soon as we have to say I, it changes everything for the listener. We might say, one might not trust that group, or, we need to move on. And really what we're saying is, I don't trust that group. Very, very different. Or I feel like we need to move on. Now I'm owning it, and it's more vulnerable. But it's the smallest change. It's just a habit. And so usually when I'm working with clients, I continually repeat this throughout our work, because it changes everything from a listener's experience, and it will allow us to have more real conversations easily, because I can always own what is happening for me. And that's my way of connecting with you, is here's what's happening for me. Here's what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, and what I want right now. And then I can inquire in with you, and then you and I can actually connect. When we use language in vague terms like one or they, we're talking out here. And then we can completely miss each other. So really, really small point, but really, really important. If your listeners can take that away, maybe read the article. It's about 2 minutes, and then go practice it. It's one of the smallest changes that can do so much work for us.
Oh, beautiful. So, Susanne, whenever we use the word I, it also kind of pushes us to become more self-aware of what we are saying, what we are thinking, what we are feeling. Do you also see that that can shift perspectives, and in terms of becoming more self-aware or becoming more cognizant about your whole existence in that place, or being in the present moment? Do you see that happening in boardrooms?
Yes, and it's exactly for those purposes as well. I get more insight into my own experience when I have to speak for because I have to check in. And I think it's one of the things, still at the top is a majority of men. And we certainly, I'm from North America, from Canada. We don't socialize boys to know how they feel. And nothing could matter more than our feelings. Absolutely. Because we do not make any logical decision without going through the emotional channel of our brain. We think we do, we don't. And even now, leading now, what matters more is managing the culture and the climate and how people feel during a global pandemic. And we need to be in touch with, how do I feel? And so exactly, if I speak an I, it helps me to go, what's happening for me right now? I'm uncertain. I don't like the direction we're going. I'm feeling concerned. What am I feeling? Sometimes when I ask clients that, and again, it'll be more men than women, not always, but often, and they won't actually understand the question. How do you feel? They'll go to a thinking answer. No, how do you feel? And so I think for some, it's a real chance to really go, what do I feel? Mad, sad, glad. What's the feeling of it, and starting to name it, and then I can be in real communication with you, because now we're talking about where we're both at. Exactly. Yeah.
Lovely. So while a leader shares his I point of view to strengthen his position, do you also see that can act as a source of vulnerability to show his real himself or herself to the world? And does that become advantageous to a leader over time?
Yes. Yeah, Brene Brown says, vulnerability in me feels like weakness, in you it looks like strength. So, right, it is, and I think it's why her work is so wildly popular, as it should be. I know for myself, let me model it. It's hard to name what is actually happening for me. It's always felt a bit risky, a bit scary, very vulnerable. I've always heard it's where people felt most connected to me, because we connect on our humanity. So absolutely. And we see this. I was on a great call last week with the CEO of UPS and Nike, and both of them did an exquisite job of sharing personally from their own experience and speaking of, here's what I need to do. I make sure I get out in nature. The CEO of Nike, I was really impressed. He referred always to everyone by name, and before he spoke, he would validate what someone else said. There was just small communication sort of tools he used, but very authentically, that I could see why he leads just such a successful organization. And boy, they have an incredible commercial out right now that really, I don't think is a commercial. It is really a leadership message for our time.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, Google, Nike's latest commercial, fantastic. They nailed it.
I see that. It's beautiful. Brilliantly done. Brilliantly done. Two worlds coming to one. Yes, yes, yes. Beautiful. So, Susanne, this leads me to a completely different aspect of coaching. You've been having several thousands of leadership conversations over the years. And do you see unconscious bias as an observation in leadership and leaders?
Short answer, of course. What we might need to do is define it, unconscious bias as you mean it. I'm going to make it a little bit larger. And I'll do it through an analogy. My 11-year-old just bought the Oculus Quest. It's a VR headset. Fascinating. I mean, you put it on and literally in another world completely, and interacting with another world. Now, when I watch my husband or my daughter or my son play this, and they're on it, and they're in our dining room, and I'm communicating with them to say, it's time to turn that off, or we're going to have dinner. They'll communicate with me, but they're clearly interacting with an entirely different world that is very real to them. And I'm interrupting that world. And I think that's the greatest analogy of what's happening for all of us. We're all in our own headset interacting with our internal world, which is our history, all our motivations, desires, where we think we're going. We have a movie playing and we're interacting with that. I can't see your movie, you can't see mine. But then we come together with the only rudimentary tool we have, which is language. And it's very ineffective. I might say one word that your father used to use and it gets your back up, and I have no idea. So I feel like we have all these mental maps and biases and what we think is the way to live life, and what we consider rude behavior, especially now as we interact globally. I mean, there's just no way to know I cannot know enough about you to not offend you. I mean, right? And so I think what we need is grace for each other and exceptional curiosity and communication skills to inquire into, what is the movie you're watching? Here's the movie I'm watching. And then how do we start to align? And great leaders will do this. It's that their leadership communication is, can we get everyone watching the same movie? Right. Here's who we are, here's what we're about, here's where we're going. And when we know that, we're as aligned as we possibly can be, and we hold the same values. And so, I think what is happening in the world now is having us realize maybe we're not as far ahead as we thought we were. We weren't watching the same movie. Half of us are not at all. And some are watching, for me, a very scary movie that I find it really even hard to believe. That is the thought process and mental map of some human beings, because I've always believed we're all equal and we all want the same things. And it is our place of connection. And when we have things like, as sports come back, and Nike did this well, we can connect. If we connect on the higher level things, the lower level things kind of drop off. And so it is the leader to lift us above to what's a higher level purpose of what we really all care about. Martin Luther King, did it. I have a dream. We all share that same dream. Yeah, I want that too. Great. Let's just connect there and not worry about the rest of it. So yeah, there's unconscious bias with women, with people of different cultures. Absolutely, it's playing out in me. It's playing out in you. And so greater self-awareness, which is what you raised in why I statements, can be so powerful because it gives us and other people insight into that. We will learn about ourselves as, wow, I didn't know that that's what I was thinking, and it was informing every single thing I did.
Right. Beautiful. You brought about a beautiful concept of connecting with each other to remove these biases that may be there, and perhaps it happens very effectively with open conversations to understand what I am thinking, what you are going through, an exchange of those ideas that can result in those biases to become minimal, if not nil. So thank you for that. Many times when we deal and interact with leaders, I've seen silence play a very powerful role. Now, that is from a practitioner's perspective. However, as a coach, do you think silence is a very powerful instrument for driving messages across to executives?
Yeah. Are you asking for me to use silence in the development? Yes. In fact, I co-authored a book years ago where there was one of 4 coaching tools. Silence is the 4th one. Susan Scott, in her book, Fierce Conversations, which is a really wonderful piece of work, said, let silence do the heavy lifting. And we know this in sales. You ask for the sale and then you be quiet. I ask a question and then if I ask a good one, there should be quite a significant silence after it. Because it is a really deep question that needs some level of thought to answer. And that's where the value comes in is, I haven't thought of that before, or, I haven't thought of this in a while, or now I have to answer this verbally. And there's power to having our brain organized in order to be able to speak it to another. It makes it real. It's why we don't like, when the doctor says the word cancer, all of a sudden everything changes because it's made real from verbalizing. So there's power. So absolutely. I also use silence in the sense that some clients come to me and use it extremely well as they communicate and acknowledge it. Some are very rushed in their cadence of speech. And it actually, what I'll do is I'll watch what happens. It creates anxiety for me. I start to get rushed. I start to feel like there's no time. And then what I'll do is I'll name that. Go, wow, the experience of interacting with you. And I wonder how many other people feel that in your presence. Because some of them, the greatest leaders they have an executive maturity and presence that says, I've been here, I've done that, I've dealt with, all this stuff. This is just one more thing. They don't get too worked up over anything, and they create calm in other people very, very intentionally, or they're just masterful at it. And so I help clients also to really pay attention to how do you impact other people through your cadence of speech. Do you use silence also in your conversation? So yes, absolutely. But from a practitioner point of view, it's, ask and then let them, it's mostly, if I'm doing more than, this is a very different experience, but if I'm doing as much talking as I'm doing here with you, I'm not coaching. I'm just filling airtime. I want them to be speaking the majority of the time.
Beautiful. So you are saying that silence is definitely a very powerful instrument for driving insights in all people, not leaders alone. So this also leads me to another question, which is around, in all your conversations with leaders, how difficult has it been to shift mindsets or to shift paradigms in leaders, because it's years of experience that they bring to the table. And unlearning or redefining it for themselves must be a huge challenge for you, much more than them. So, what has been your experience in this space?
Yeah, I'm not sure it is more of a challenge for me than for them, because almost every client will say at some point, this is so much harder than I thought it would be. Or, I hated every second of working with you, but it was the best thing I ever did. I take that as a compliment, but it was. I think it's so hard because one, I think generally what I'm doing when I'm first meeting with someone is to see how interested are they really in getting better. And I can tell right away for the ones that aren't. I just say, I just don't see you out of the starting gate, and that's okay. You don't need to be. Just you're successful. Just keep doing what you're doing if it's working for you. And but if it isn't, and that's the lever I have with clients, is they can already feel it. It's not working, and they can't get to the next level. If they could get themselves to the next level, they would do it without a coach, because they're very smart, talented, driven. It's really hard inner work to flip that switch. I think it's what I'm looking for very early on is, what's that switch? What's the one thing that would get them to really get it and to break it wide open? Because it's not a mechanical thing. Like, I can teach you I statements, and I can teach you, various techniques. Those are all mechanical, and they'll all fail you in some capacity. What we want to do is transformational. What we want to do is have you, and it works at the level of identity, change how you think about yourself. Because human beings will always behave in a manner that's consistent with their self-identity. So I'm looking for what is the way that they conceive of themselves now. And they will often say, well, I've never thought of myself as a coach. It's like, you have 2,000 people reporting to you, and you've never thought of yourself as a coach, but they're thinking about a million and one other things and handling billions of dollars. When do they have time to think of this? So is somehow identifying that switch. And I find it actually not particularly hard to find that. And then it's a matter of sort of behaving their way into it and adopting that identity. And then behavior starts to naturally flow, such that often at the end of the engagement, I will say, here's where we started from and things that you wanted to achieve. And they'll say, oh, really? Was that an issue for me? And I'll say, yeah, it was a big issue back then, but completely gone. I'm like, okay, that's success, but you don't even remember it, that was frustrating or challenging for you, because now you think of the world and yourself very differently. So I think it's easier for me, much harder. I know my own experience. I always hire my own coaches, and it's I say I like coaching. As soon as I get into it, I don't like it. I don't like someone poking at me and having to look at what's hard for me and the ways that I know I'm ineffective, but I can't even understand what that is. I don't like it when I don't know something about myself. And the truth is, all of us have this hidden part of ourselves that we don't really understand of who we are to other people. And it's always been very painful for me. I go into my own learning, kicking and screaming. So I know what I'm asking. Yeah.
So there's so much intensity and authenticity in whatever you are sharing. Shows a lot of depth in your own understanding of your space, in the way you've understood leaders as human beings, like we kept talking. So the next question I have is, since you see leaders as humans at the end of the day, what makes them lonely at the top?
There's no one to talk to anymore that understands your world. It's kind of, a great analogy, like a parent. You're responsible for all of it, but no one ever asks how you're doing. Everything comes back onto you, and you can't share your fears, your frustrations in the same way, because people want to know, hey, has someone got this? And your answer to them is, yeah, we've got this. Right? We want a sense that we don't want to the leader at the top to be coming unraveled in front of our eyes. We want someone that says, hey, been there, done that, we'll be okay, here's where we're going, just focus on this, you're doing great. So it's lonely because there's very few people that understand the nature of your world. Everyone's turning to you and wanting something from you. They want your acknowledgement, your attention, your validation. They keep at, how am I doing? And they want that, much like we seek that from a parent. And very few will ever turn and say, how are you? Are you okay? What's happening for you? And so, there's a wonderful book called $1 Trillion Coach, and it profiles the life of Bill Campbell, who in his later years was a CEO to the likes of Steve Jobs and others. And he would essentially go for a Sunday morning walk with Steve Jobs. And it was just one place that Steve could freely talk with someone who wasn't part of his family and had vested interest, and someone who had been a CEO, and so just unpack and then make some decisions and get greater clarity for himself, feel seen, heard, and leave with greater focus. So I think that's why executive coaching exists, because where else can you do that? You can do it with other peers and colleagues, but not many of them train to make a conversation only about you. Yeah.
Beautiful. It's a very different world. It's a very different perspective when you start thinking from the eyes of a leader, which, as you said rightly, it's rare because we are always concerned about ourselves and not really thinking about what's happening to him as a leader or her as a leader. In this journey, when you speak to leaders, how receptive are leaders to feedback, or when do they start accepting feedback? Because that's again something that most people find that a very difficult skill, to give feedback to leaders. So what's been your experience in this?
Yeah, well, part of the issue is that the leader's not getting the truth anymore. Most people are afraid. And for some very good reasons. That's my livelihood. And who am I to? Maybe they know something I don't. I have found leaders are incredibly, the reason they've gotten to the top is that they're really good. And they want to get better. And they endlessly learn. Not all of them, but certainly the ones that I've always worked with. I think my job is to connect with them quite quickly and determine what's not working for them, what's frustrating, where are they bumping up against themselves. And so they're motivated in the sense that what's made them get to the top is they endlessly want to learn and problem solve and achieve and be successful. And so they kind of have that drive. So I find them actually very open to feedback. Not all. Some, one I gave some feedback to and didn't like it and fired me, and that's okay. I said, I'm the only one that's going to tell you the truth because everyone's afraid of you. Like, listen, this is why you hired me. But others, I think, again, my job is to deliver it with warmth, empathy, compassion, humor. I wrote an article that sort of summarizes a lot of sort of first interactions where I say, why are we speaking? And they say, well, I'm an a-hole. And I say, well, I don't know, are you an a-hole? And they, yeah, I kind of am. And we both laugh. And I said, well, I can be one too. Mm-hmm. So let's look at what does that actually mean? What's happening for you? Where does that play out where it's just not useful? Mm-hmm. It's a lower, less mature, executive mature way of interacting as a leader. So how can we transform that same conversation so that you don't have to be an a-hole or passive aggressive or, but you can actually still have the real conversation you need to have. So we have a sense of it where we're just not, we know we're not as effective as we could be. I mean, all of us. You ask anyone, where do you want to, where do you bump up against yourself? What's frustrating? How do you want to be able to handle yourself? Mm-hmm. We all have this vision of our own self-mastery that I'm not sure any of us get to. But it's certainly, I think it's hopefully what I impart to my clients is really rewarding to continue to work toward it.
Right.
It can be really fun. It doesn't have to always be so painful. Yeah.
What's the toughest assignment you've handled where you said, I don't want to do this anymore? Do you have instances like that?
Yes. I have several that come to mind. I think the toughest work, and it may be why, you know, my love is one-on-one. When I am, I will design and deliver in conjunction with a CEO or COO a senior leadership offsite, like a 2-day experience. I'll say, you know, CEO, what does the 2 days need to deliver? You know, where's the team now? What's happening in the business? And we will, in partnership over some period of time, several months, design the exact experience of that entire. Often when I am flying, back in the day when we would travel to that offsite, I have often wished that the plane would go down. I was so afraid. You know, to have a room full of some of the most successful senior men and women, many times like engineering groups or something I know nothing about. And it's just not the way my mind thinks. And so it's like, okay, I'm walking into, you know, some clients have even, I'll often like interview all the team members, do a bunch of research, pull it all together, present that research at the offsite, have the team work with it. And it's heated issues. You know, probably the one that comes to mind is an executive, as I was interviewing him, said, look, you know, just want to let you know, I think you're walking into a landmine as you come, you know, to our session in June. And I was like, all right, here I'm literally flying to the end of my career and the room is going to explode. And, you know, I have had rooms where people are so upset, they're leaving, they're yelling. And it's scary. It's really scary work. Somehow it's all gone okay, but it's a lot to contain for me. Like I find after 2 days of that, I am literally exhausted because there's so much to manage individually and then the entire system and then to hold the system together and to try to move the system. So I feel like I'm firing on all cylinders and you know, clients are investing heavily. Not only financially, but the time to fly all these executives in for 2 days. That those 2 days have got to deliver. There's no, you know, otherwise, literally, it's like there's the end of my entire career. That's how it feels to me. So, yeah. So it's scary work. Somehow, I don't know why I continue to do it, because when I'm in it, I'll usually do it with a colleague, and I'll say, I don't want to do this work anymore. I don't know why I keep doing this work. After it, I'm like, I love it. It went amazing. It was incredible. Flying home, yay! So, and she's like, you're so weird. Like, so I don't know why I keep doing it. It must be because I love it. I love the fear. I don't know.
I believe you're doing this because you're seeing the transformation happening right in front of your eyes. And there is a much deeper insight you're having out of all these experiences that have bundled you into the Susanne Biro that you are today. So that must be the whole reason why you continue to be so good at it, because you still have that vulnerability. And somewhere I read, you know, winners are the ones who continuously mock themselves, and they aspire to be, you know, reaching higher because of that self-criticism that they continuously do, and that's why they are there. So I guess Susanne Biro is where she is because of exactly that fear and apprehension that she takes, which makes everything so successful later. So what I hear you say is it's not easy to show a mirror at a leader. And many times it's not a very easy journey a coach has. So given that, have you had amygdala hijacks during a coaching conversation? Have you felt emotional outbursts and you just want to scream, but you have to really control yourself? Have you had those moments, Susanne?
Yes, but let me just, if I want, I'm not a particular, like, I just want to scream kind of person, but I do have the hijack in the sense that my main thing is I want to provide value. So it becomes my Achilles heels that I want to overfunction for my clients. And I want to solve all their problems. And so if I'm in front of a room or I'm on a call, I will notice, oh, I don't think this is going very well. Or the client will even say, I'm not sure this is needed right now. And right away I'll go to feeling diminished. And so that's one thing that I manage, and to not overfunction. I usually bring, I have had years ago, and a colleague reminded me of this. I was doing a live coaching as part of a course in front of the group. And I was actually in the course versus teaching it. And as I was coaching someone, I could feel that I lost their trust. I said something and something changed. And I said, oh my goodness, I've just lost your trust, haven't I? And they said, yes, you have. And so we had a connection and a conversation of what was really playing out. And so it was nice to be reminded of that, because it's what I do all the time now. When something's not working, I'll say, I don't think this is working. Should we end this coaching? What other resource do you? And so, or I'll say, I'm noticing that I'm really intimidated by you right now. And I'm intimidated because you come to this call in this way. You're using this tone of voice, all the behaviorally specific things. And it's leading me to this. And so I usually bring, I guess my answer is I bring it above board now. When something's really happening for me, to serve the client or the client system. Or if I'm in a room and it doesn't serve the client system, then I just put it off here, go, that's my stuff. I'll work it out later with my coach. Right now, the room needs me. So there's always my stuff coming in. My hope, and you would know this well, is we develop ourselves so that we don't work our own stuff at the expense of our clients. My stuff is always there. I notice it. I put it off to the side, I handle it, I bring it above board if it can serve them too. So it's always a decision point. But my own insecurities and fears are always like, they're right here. They don't go away. It's like, there it is again. Okay, and I just try not to, which is what I teach clients. I don't act from that without thinking about it. I go, there's that's my stuff. Is anything they need to serve here? If not, then it's not the time. And so I just don't respond instinctively from there as I used to. I now have this buffer that says what makes sense, what's useful. And I hope that's a level of sort of growth and maturity. But we're all on our own path, aren't we?
Absolutely. So I can sense and experience how much you work from a space of security at this point in time. As much as you have those apprehensions, I think you've overcome many of those to be in the space that you are. This leads me to the next question, which is around, when do you think executive coaching doesn't work?
One, when the client doesn't want it, and we can feel that. And it might be, I've been on sort of introduction calls, and I said, do you want coaching? And they say no. Or not really, my boss wants it for me. Say, well, that's wonderful, but your boss actually can't want this. It won't work. It won't be effective. You and I will just waste a bunch of time and money, and you won't actually really engage in this so I say, keep doing what you're doing. If it's working for you and you're on track for what you care about, fantastic. So I think it has got to come from the individual person wanting coaching to say, I think I can be better. I want to get there. And I don't, I want an external person to help walk me through what that next level looks like for me. Yeah.
Beautiful.
With that ingredient, coaching works.
Lovely. So Susanne, I heard you talk about authenticity. I heard you speak about vulnerability. I heard you talk about the apprehensive self that every coach perhaps has during a coaching conversation. I heard you talk about the whole self. I heard you speak about being humane in a conversation. I also heard you speak about tone of the voice that can powerfully change a conversation. With all this, I truly believe you've made huge transformations in several leaders globally. I want to ask you one last question. What is it that makes Susanne happy?
Oh, such a great question. I love I like dealing with what's real. You know, my tagline is "Tell the truth, change the world." And so I love getting at truth, not truth with a capital T, but what is your truth? What is real for you right now? Because it's a way to know people. And I feel like through my work, it's a one-way intimacy. But it is, I know just thousands of men and women that often they share with me what they don't share with anyone else. And I take that as an incredible honor. When people trust me with, things that are hard to share, or things they've never shared with anyone else, I get to know a lot of really incredible human beings, and they never take that for granted. So that is probably the most rewarding part of my work, is that people place trust in me, and I hold that in extremely high regard.
Beautiful. So, Susanne, it was just so lovely knowing about you, knowing about the work you do, all the transformational journeys that you spoke about. And I'm sure the world is a better place because of individuals like you. So thanks for making the world better through your wonderful coaching. And it was a pleasure hosting you today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, and bye-bye.
Bye.